Hello, guys, and welcome to my Pittsburgh Steelers 7 round mock draft. I'm going to be trying to go through this rather quickly. I have this and another one because it's a busy day. It's a busy day this Tuesday, to say the least. So, we're going to look at their depth chart right quick, and then we're going to go into their needs. Although I somewhat know what's going on, with this team for the most part. So it's like offensively, obviously Pickens, Metcalf, Calvin Austin, wide receivers, I think very solid. Austin, a good player developing still in what has been a lackluster offense. Obviously, they pick up Metcalf because it gives them another kind of dynamic of a deep threat kind of player. And, hopefully the Metcalf and Pickens at the very least can free up a lot for Freiermuth and Calvin Austin. Looking at their O-line, I'm not convinced. Obviously, their O-line was kind of shoddy, for the last however many years. Broderick Jones, Isaac Samalu, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and then Troy Fatanu. I do think that they'll be drafting offensive line. And then, the running back room, they have Jalen Warren, Najee Harris departs in free agency, Kenneth Gainwell from Philadelphia. Obviously, he was their second depth chart back over in Philadelphia behind Saquon. And then Cordell Patterson, who's obviously more of like a specialist, maybe short yardage situation as he is a bigger but speedy guy. Looking at the defense, we obviously know led by TJ Watt. And then their other, pass rusher, Alex Highsmith, very good. I love Watt. I love Highsmith. I think that they're excellent pass rushers type of thing. I don't think they really need help there. Looking at, D-tackle Cameron Hayward played impressively last year. Let's hope he can still, keep it going, that sort of thing. And then Keanu Ben, Isaiah Loudermilk, interesting. And then obviously for inside linebackers, you have Patrick Queen, former Baltimore Raven, drafted by them, and then Peyton Wilson. They have signed Darius Slay, and then they have Deshaun Elliott, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr., and then they brought in Brandon Eccles. So I could see them bringing in a DB, to help this, this room, maybe a safety. Obviously Minka is fine, type of thing. Perhaps a inside linebacker, but for the most part, I think that this team needs offensive line and wide receiver and maybe running back if the right running back is there. But we're going to start the draft and we're going to look at these guys only have 6 picks. So it's kind of one of those where it's like, what are they going to grab? Now, and I have been seeing this where we get to this pick and Malachi Starks is available. We are going to go ahead and draft him just because he's so good. This guy could be the next kind of big thing. Maybe not a Troy Polamalu type level, but could definitely help and do a lot for this defense. So we're going to draft him, and we're going to move all the way down to pick 83 in round 3. So clearly a lot of, what's interesting here is we have a number of wide receivers. I honestly think that they could grab another one, but it's like one of those things that, hey, we really need, certain things. Obviously, the thing about them too is that they've been linked to certain QBs. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, the speedster, who's kind of a, he's an X Factor type player with a lot of upside, but do you really want to plug him into this system type of thing? I honestly don't know if Rodgers is going to sign here. It's kind of, I would say, derailed them a little bit, but overall, we're going to look at tackle right here. I'm going to go Wyatt Millum. I think Wyatt Millum, it kind of has that size that he can be, become maybe even a bigger guy and be a solid guy for this offensive line. So we're going to draft him, and I don't think it matters which side he lines up on type of thing. Now, to me, it's like if you're looking at QB still, you could maybe go Quinn Ewers. They have a pick at 156. I do think that Quinn, to be honest with you, it's like some of these guys, they, Will Howard has he doesn't have the craziest arm talent type of thing. Riley Leonard, dual threat quarterback with plus value as a runner, but his passing efficiency numbers are bad. Obviously, lighter in size at 6'4" for a QB. That's more of a wide receiver build. Dylan Gabriel. But then we also have, Quinn Ewers, who I think he could be a guy that, they draft on this team. But with this pick, I don't know if they would. And I mean, there's a few guys ahead of Ewers and that sort of thing. In terms of halfback, there is Trevor Etienne, who I think, good sort of, production in the touchdown category. Obviously a stockier guy who's very, very young type of thing, could be your second down running back, or I mean your second depth chart running back type of thing, or develop into something. I'm just looking here at kind of like what's available. Jarquez Hunter, I don't think I've ever looked at this guy. Oh, very elusive, speedster, good build right here, good yards and good production, getting better each year, even though he's had the same amount of games and just more attempts every single year. But, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the trigger on this guy because he does have the touchdown production. He looks like he's kind of, Jarquez Hunter is a guy that, hey, maybe he's a big play waiting to happen, and then we have Quinn Ewers here. Now, we do have Dylan Gabriel here, who obviously is ranked a little bit higher. His pressure grade isn't terrible, and he does have deep, intermediate, and then his no pressure is very, very solid. He's obviously a smaller guy. This is obviously a Drew Brees like, height, type of thing. So he obviously has poise and intelligence and that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, left-handed. I love left-handers. I'm a left-hander myself, you guys. Love it. We may go, honestly, and we're going to draft Dylan Gabriel. He looks like a guy who would maybe be a little bit of a raw prospect. Perhaps could get a little bit bigger, they don't really ask set of QBs that much. But it's like you were willing to roll with Russell Wilson, who also isn't a big guy, type of thing. And that offense, worked at times with him. So, maybe they take this guy and draft him. Moving on to round 6, 2 more picks. I think we do need to draft a guard. I do think that we need to draft, we already have a safety. I feel like that's the only thing we need really on the defense, especially a guy who's projected that high. We're going to go ahead. I like a few of the guys at this range for tackle and that sort of thing, and then even center. So it's like we'll sort it that way. So we have Monheim, who to me, his grades and that sort of thing don't really say, hey, I'm a guy you want type of thing. I just don't see it. Emory Jones Jr. has a big, taller size, very raw, could obviously put on some weight, but he's overall as a tackle, he's, let up very few sacks. Problem area his first year, obviously improved a lot the second year, had less snaps, by a good margin. And I mean, I guess if you include this, it's not by a crazy margin type of thing. It's like 180, but minus that, I think he's gotten better. He has had where these QBs have gotten hurried, but if you do draft this QB and he's your guy, which I'm assuming he would be, because you already know what you have in, who is it? Mason Rudolph, who obviously got brought back, signed back to me, and that Skylar Thompson is not gonna be your guy. Like, there's no way that he's your guy of the future. If he is, I would be deathly scared as a Steelers fan. So with the last pick here, I do feel like we have to go O-line again. We've got 2 tackles. Maybe we find a guard here, whoever is available. It's kind of one of those things. Oh, Timothy McKay's here. We're going to draft him. He's a guy that I like. And, I think, you look at this and oh goodness, I guess, overall draft grade A, but we're still top 57%. That's, interesting to me. Obviously, it's like we drafted tackle Wyatt Millum, maybe a little bit of a reach. This guy, a tiny reach. The QB that we got was above, their prospect. And then even Emory Jones, it's like 6 ahead. And then Timothy McKay, I guess, it's a little bit of a reach, but it's your final pick. And overall, you address the O-line, which really has been needing to be addressed for years and years and years. I just think that overall it's one of those interesting things that hey, we need this position, and it's like, well, look at who was drafted kind of ahead, in this sort of thing. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me if you think that, this was a good draft, if you'd be happy with this, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, or what you think. Obviously, with the limited amount of picks, if they really didn't want to go Malachi Starks, I'm sure they could find a trade partner. Because, like, who do we have that was still on the board? You still have Kenneth Grant, Kelvin Banks, Hampton, Egbuka, Emanwari, James Pierce, Burden, Loveland, Nolan Harmon, and Zabel. I honestly think that you kind of look and you kind of, think that like one of these guys might get targeted, by another, there might be one of these teams that wants to jump up a bit and ahead. It's kind of crazy to me that Emanwari went right here, to be honest with you. And it's like, perhaps, there's a team that wants to jump ahead that's earlier in the round to grab one of these players in the second round, and you could load up on a lot of draft capital. I'm not going to go into specifics, as this is not what this video is for, but tell me what you think, about this draft, and as always, go Pack Go.